Jeff was really well known for saying, "In God we trust. Everybody else, bring me data."
Welcome back to the podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and business mavericks. If you're not a maverick, you don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of this podcast. In this podcast, we teach entrepreneurs how to defeat the corporate giant. Just like in the story of David and Goliath, David defeated a much taller and stronger Goliath, not by fighting the giant in hand-to-hand combat, but by using technology. A slingshot. The slingshot allowed the smaller David to attack from a distance that minimized the advantages that Goliath had over the smaller David. My name is Mark Anthony Peterson. I'm a serial entrepreneur, futurist, and the managing executive at Sierra Consulting, a leading small business strategy and technology consulting firm. I'm also the author of the book Guerrillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. We have a wonderful show for you today. We actually have a David. Yes, his name is David Selinger, and he is the founder and CEO of Deep-Sentinel, a home security company that's doing stuff a little different than all the other guys. He's a startup taking on a host of Goliaths in the home security business, and he's using artificial intelligence as his slingshot. But let me tell you something else about David. He worked directly for Jeff Bezos at Amazon, and he's going to share with you why Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, how he approaches problems, how he uses data as a way to make decisions. If you don't listen to any other podcast episode anywhere, you should listen to this one. Now here's my interview with David Selinger, founder and CEO of Deep-Sentinel. Guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is going to be another great, fun show. I can already tell in just the pre-interview with Mr. David Selinger here. He is the co-founder of Redfin and the founder of Deep-Sentinel, which we're going to spend all of the show talking about that. Let me tell you a little bit about him. As I mentioned, the co-founder of Redfin, a great startup, but here's what's more interesting. He's one of these early guys that was involved with a small company called Amazon, where he was a leader in the R&D group. And he's recognized just about by anybody who does any sort of looking as a 40 under 40 innovator. You just check all the magazines, his mugshot's there as a 40 under 40. Mr. David Selinger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about you. I mean, that's a pretty wide-ranging set of capabilities. Redfin in the real estate market, Amazon, we all know that company. And now you're building Deep-Sentinel, a home security platform. I mean, you've got skills all over the place. Tell us a little bit more about you personally and how you got involved with this sort of groundbreaking technology.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I would say, if you did a reference on me, I think that you'd find two words would come up pretty consistently. The first one would be intensity. Everything that I do, whether it's in my personal life or at work, whether in e-commerce or real estate or artificial intelligence, I don't have a second, third, and fourth gear. I have a first gear to get going, and then it's straight to fifth, and then when it gets going, I go into sixth. The second word would be technical, right? So I come from a technical background, and the reason I have looked at all of these different business opportunities is because I come at it not from a deep experience in e-commerce or a deep experience in real estate perspective, but from a purely technical perspective. When I was 6 years old, my parents, who were both doctors, were kind of surprised to learn that I wanted to learn how to program a computer, and that was where my passion really lived. And so at 6 years old, I taught myself my first programming language. I grew up in a little town in Southern Oregon called Grants Pass, a population of like 15,000 people. And there was really nowhere to go to learn that stuff. And so you kind of combine those two things, the intensity and the technical leaning. And at 6 years old, I took my parents to the library. I walked up to the shelf. They have one shelf with computer programming languages, and I started going, and I taught myself a bunch of languages. And as I got older, I got a chance to go to Stanford, where I got really exposed to the business world, which is the world where technology insights have gone in the last 20 some years, 30 years to really flourish. And I was really fortunate, frankly. I see my life as being very blessed in that if you take those two skills and you bring me back 100 years, I also happen to have asthma. I just would have been dead. And so, I also recognize that I think it was the right set of personality traits, the right set of skills at just the right time. And so, I think that really describes me. I would add the third thing. Recently, I have two little girls, and I think a lot about balancing that with my family and things that are really important long term. And that's actually what brought me to Deep Sentinel. And I know you got a bunch more questions, but just to tie that back together, I've had an opportunity in my career to be involved in just some amazing businesses with obviously some of the world's most successful people. And when I took a step back and I said, what is it I want to do next? Deep Sentinel was really founded not only on the technology and the business opportunity, but doing something that changes the lives of the people that we touch. And one of the things that I have learned through my work in parenting and as a father, and as I've gotten to know a lot of folks in the foster care and the policing industries, how important a sense of safety is to people making good decisions. And so Deep Sentinel is a business that is built with the purpose of creating safety for people.
Some of my early work, I dedicated my life to trying to make the world a safer place. And technology is a great starting point to do so. Before we dig into Deep Sentinel, I want the audience kind of to really understand the level at which you attack problems. You were credited with creating some of the first commercial product recommendation engines for Amazon. I mean, that kind of thinking just really did not exist before you looked at places like Amazon to make that value creating component. Walk us through how you saw that as an opportunity for Amazon, and then the technical thinking that you had to bring to bear for a concept that's now widely used across many different retailing platforms.
Sure. So, first and foremost, I have to put credit where credit is due. I got to be at Amazon, right? And the neat thing is I got to be there before anybody really cared about Amazon that much. In the early 2000s, the headline on the Wall Street Journal wasn't, what yacht is Jeff Bezos going to buy now? It was, when is Amazon going to go out of business? Every single month, Wall Street Journal ran a story. When is Amazon going to go out of business? And so, the thing I would first point to is I had the ability to grow my career first, with direct relationship with Jeff Bezos. Whom again is another name that now everybody knows and nobody gave a rat's tail about 20 years ago. But he came from a company called D.E. Shaw before he started Amazon. D.E. Shaw is a highly quantitative financial institution. And so his perspective was what gave me and a lot of my peers at Amazon a really interesting charter. And I got a very specific one. And it was all around data. Jeff was really well known for saying, in God we trust. Everybody else, bring me data. And that's just an awesome foundation, right?
I'm going to make a T-shirt with that on.
Oh, man, you should. Every one of the early folks at Amazon that worked directly with him especially will know that was the rule. And actually, let me before I even get into kind of some of the other stuff, I want to give him one more shout out, because there's a story that to me marks the hallmark of my memory of Amazon, and it's where the rubber meets the road on that statement. So my team was given the charter to do whatever it took to use data and make money. And the reason the D.E. Shaw background was really important is because, like you said, most companies didn't really think about data as an asset in 2001, 2002, 2003. It was still something they collected, and some of them were able to make money. It was really only in the financial institutions, D.E. Shaw, where they figured out how to take data and turn it right into money. Jeff said, you know what, we have so much data. I think we should do the same thing here. He presented that to the board of directors. They said, sweet, neat idea. Show us how to do it. And he didn't know how to do it. So he'd hired a bunch of different people to do that. And I was really fortunate that I got to be kind of the third or fourth person in line to do that. He had tried going with academic folks. And with me, he said, I'm going to combine a little bit of the academics, but I didn't have an advanced degree. I'd done a bunch of advanced research, but I'd never gotten an advanced degree. And he said, but you know enough about stats and you have this drive. Let's give it to this guy and see what happens. And so actually my predecessor had a PhD and was a professor. And instead, they downgraded, if you will, the intellectual side of that role and upgraded the intensity side of that role, and really do whatever it takes. So one of my favorite stories, again, I'll go back to that, was my team was looking at all these different ways to make money. One of them was using new recommendation algorithms. One of them was doing content algorithms. And one of them we were really excited about. This is the one that we thought was going to win. And this one was to present smarter ads on the homepage of Amazon. So if you looked at a TV yesterday, instead of showing you generic stuff, show you a TV. And lo and behold, it failed. It failed miserably. And it failed because we accidentally included in that a test to show a third-party advertisement, meaning to take you to buy something that was not an Amazon product on the Amazon homepage. And this at the time was kind of a black sheep project that someone was working on and nobody cared about. Everybody hated it, actually. And what we found was that content was the most profitable thing we could show to almost anybody on the Amazon homepage. We optimized it, did a little bit more, and we found that not only was it the best thing on the homepage, it was the best thing on all these spots throughout the entire Amazon webpage. We're talking like 10 times higher profit, 20 times higher profit, 100 times higher profit per customer. So I brought that to Jeff. I said, hey, we should run this everywhere. We should run really big experiments and figure it out. Jeff's response: we are an e-commerce company. We sell stuff. We don't sell other people's stuff. That is the dumbest idea I have ever heard. He said that in front of quite a few people. And, he wasn't the Jeff Bezos that he is today, but still hearing from the CEO, that's the dumbest idea that you ever heard. It kind of puts you on your heel, right?
Right.
And that said, though, we said, well, Jeff, I hear you. It does. Like, it sounds kind of unfitting, right? But here's the data. In that same meeting, in less than 10 minutes, Jeff Bezos, the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company, took the data and he changed his mind. He said, I was wrong, run with it. And he didn't do that behind closed doors where a lot of CEOs like to kind of maintain their public power because they don't change their mind. In fact, he saw that his public power, his influence over his organization, came not from being right all the time. It came from being right most of the time. But when he was wrong, to not shy away from it, to lean into it. When the data are presented that say, hey, that's wrong, that intuition is wrong, that's the greatest opportunity, because if the intuition is wrong, that's where nobody else is going to go look. Fast forward to today, that's about a $4 billion profit business at Amazon. And that was all based on him being willing in that one meeting to look at the data and say, I'm wrong, this is right, let's go with it.
Wow. Guys, I hope you had your pens out for just this part of the podcast. We could end it right now. And
stick around, though. Stick around.
We can end it right now. And all of you have gotten lessons in tech, in leadership, management, product rollout, all of that, and just the introductory portion of this interview. And that to me is fascinating. And that's the reason why I threw the question in, because where you jumped off from in working with Amazon and letting data be the tip of the spear is what's driving Deep Sentinel. It's what's giving you that inflection point to disrupt the industry. So let's go there. Now that everybody knows how you think, what you brought to the table, and what you built in terms of inspiring a $4 billion profit center, you're going to recreate using that same type of an approach with Deep Sentinel. Let's tell us what Deep Sentinel is and what's its value proposition.
Yeah. So again, we're a very mission-driven organization, right? And so that really talks about what we do and how we do it differently than everybody else. You could look at our website, go to deep-sentinel.com, and you say, oh, it's another camera company. But we are fundamentally not. And that all stems from starting from and doing everything that we do with a very different mission. We're a mission-driven organization. Our mission, like I said before, is to make people safer. And that's a big mission. And it stemmed, very frankly, from a personal experience. And so I live in a pretty nice neighborhood here in California. And, we kind of tend to think that we're insulated from everything. And about 5 years ago, my neighbor, who has an alarm system, she has an expensive camera system around her home. She had a home invasion. And not a home invasion, there are various grades of these. Nobody was hurt, thank goodness, but not a little one, not an accidental one. We're talking, masks and, people were held in their home for an extended period of time. And so I called a neighborhood watch meeting, and you're going to love this from a technology perspective, right? So I introduced myself, and I introduced the police officer that's come to kind of talk to our neighborhood. And I said, well, hey, Mr. Police Officer, our neighbor, she has an alarm and she has cameras. How did this still happen to her? And that police officer pulled a 180 on me that I didn't expect. We're now friends, but man, if this would have been it, he said, well, you're the tech guy. You tell me. What did you expect an alarm to do? What did you expect the cameras to do? Jump out of the camera shell and somehow protect her and prevent this from happening? I was pretty quiet. I didn't really have an answer. But you know what? We as human beings kind of assume that this security stuff solves the security problem. But that was the realization. That was the moment I realized, oh my God. All of this stuff, alarms, cameras, we think that they make us safer, and they fundamentally do not. That was what started my digging. Was there has to be a way. Like I said, I got 2 little girls at home. I used to travel a lot. And the last thing I want is to be left believing that I've left them in a secure situation, only to find out that that was untrue. And I'll tell you, the more I peeled the onion back, the more I found out that it was true. Alarm systems, ADT, Vivint, all these guys, right? So we think they've got a great relationship with the police departments, right? Do a Google search. Do a Google search for ADT arrest. What are you going to see? You're going to see ADT employees getting arrested. Do a search for ADT lawsuit police. What are you going to see? You're going to see police departments suing ADT. And why is that? It's described best by Freakonomics. I'm assuming your readers are going to know Freakonomics, right?
They will.
These guys are the stats, the quants, the numbers, right? Freakonomics did an article, and I'm going to actually look at it before I quote it on accident. I'm going to make sure that I do it correctly. They wrote an episode called "The Hidden Cost of False Alarms," and what they found was that 94 to 95% of all police physical responses to burglar activations are false alarms. They're a waste of time.
Wow.
So police, if this is the boy who cried wolf, right? If police are having to waste 95% of their time responding to these calls, what do? They stop responding. And so chiefs of police all around the nation have been getting cities to pass ordinances that says alarm companies are false alarms and that police are not required to respond at all. That's number one. Whoa, big eye opener, right?
Right.
Number two, cameras don't do anything. They're forensic, right? So you show up afterwards as a police officer and somebody's got a video of somebody's face. If you don't recognize them, our police departments don't have these huge facial recognition, databases that you see on CSI and 24 and all that stuff. They just say, okay, great. I don't know this person. I'll hold on to it in case we run into them and arrest them. no matter what the crime is. And so what I realized was that there had to be a better solution. So the number one word when we started Deep Sentinel, again, with the mission to make people safe, was we have to actually be able to prevent crimes. And that's a pretty high bar. And so we dug into how do you actually prevent crimes. And what we did was we built a system. Deep Sentinel is proactive. It's not a reactive thing like an alarm. After somebody breaks in, maybe we'll go off and we're going to have a huge false alarm problem. Deep Sentinel has cameras around the perimeter of buildings. We do both residential and businesses. Actually, businesses are probably one of our biggest customers now. And we monitor those cameras. These aren't dumb cameras that are just recording. When those cameras trigger, within about 2 seconds, there is a professionally trained guard performing video surveillance, looking at that camera saying, is that the homeowner? Is that the business owner? Are they vandalizing it? Do they have a crowbar? Are they trying to break something open? So when you go to Deep Sentinel's website, yes, you're going to see cameras. But what you're going to see that's totally different that you don't see on ADT's website, on Ring's website, on Arlo's, any of these kind of camera companies out there, you're going to see guards coming over the camera saying, hey, what are you doing there? Stop that right now. Get away. Put the package down. You're going to be under arrest in 5 minutes. And you know what? They're not bluffing, because when we call the police on somebody if they continue committing a crime, the police say, all right, what's your crime that you're reporting? Well, I've got a burglary. I've got a guy with a crowbar breaking into the store at 123 Main Street. He's about 5'8". He's white, wearing a black hoodie. Every single police department in the country knows that that's a verified crime, and they know to respond to that. So we have arrests every single day. Unlike, again, what I pointed out with ADT. When cops hear that, when police departments hear that, they know it's a verified crime. They know that they're not sending an officer into a situation where they're going to be creating danger for themselves or for potentially the wrong person because it's a false alarm. They are doing exactly the right thing, exactly what we as citizens want our police departments to be doing for us.
I love that. With my last startup that we exited back in 2013, we were looking at a system for screening people using fingerprints that provided no data insight. Once they put a paper card in an envelope and mailed it off to the FBI, they lost control of the process. There was no information insight. There was no clarity into the workflow. 18 weeks later, the response could come back, redo the prints, and then they got to start all over. Right, 18 weeks. When we built the system that allowed them to submit live scan images, we knew we weren't solving the problem. Like you, we said we had to peel the onion and realize our customers aren't fingerprinters, they're data managers. So we had to provide them more data to make decisions, even when the response hadn't come back from the FBI. Just knowing that an employee had been fingerprinted, knowing when it was submitted, knowing when it was returned, knowing that it was either had charges or not, all of those were important nodes on the data flow to help our customers speed up the hiring process. Mm-hmm. And what I love about what you're doing to disrupt this industry is you're giving that same sort of data clarity to the consumer and to the police.
That's absolutely right.
And that's,
that's such a good point. If I can, I'm just going to dig into one feature, right? Like my favorite features of our cameras is that you can disable all the notifications. Wait, that seems weird, right? I have cameras all around my home, as you might guess, right? Like I've got dozens of them. I get on average one alert a week, because the only alert that I get is when my guard sees something suspicious and they're talking to someone. I don't get, if you've got Rings or any cameras around your home, you get like 40, 50, 100 alerts a day. And that is pure, pardon, I won't use a bad word here, but that's just garbage, right? Like
that's right.
You are lucky if you have enough time in your day to review 10 alerts from a silly app. And this is your security. So you've not only does a bunch of alerts from a camera not make you safer, it actually makes you feel bad, right? Like, oh man, I'm not doing what I need to do to take care of my family. And so what we did was we combined two key pieces of technology. We combined these cameras, but then more importantly, we started putting an AI in the back end. And that AI filters out most of the events, then makes sure the guard is reviewing anything that's suspicious. And then your experience as a user, like you just said, is I'm getting the important information. I can access my cameras. I can look at the history of events, but I'm not being barraged with this deluge of noise that's disrupting my day and frankly making me feel unsafe.
That's
Deep Sentinel
exactly
not
right.
only makes you safe, but ensures that you feel safe while we're making you safe.
And you're giving them the actionable information.
Bingo.
With my platform, like you just said, when an HR manager can look on the site and see that we've already scheduled someone's drug test because the fingerprints came back clear, they didn't have to look at that. They didn't have to respond to that. They were able to dedicate their attention to the actionable information when we said, here's somebody that didn't clear that you need to review. And so our customers were able to draw down the number of HR people and repurpose them other places in the bank because we got rid of all the noise. So when I went to your website, that's the thing that got me. So I started looking at that data flow, and I was like, wow, this guy learned a lot from Amazon because he's changing the industry by giving us better data. And that's
one of
going
the
to make a better
interesting things,
system.
it's a great point. One of the interesting things about human beings with data is that we have these thresholds, right? And they're not like hard thresholds necessarily, but if for example, I lie to you 50% of the time, that's enough.
That's enough for me to know that.
That's enough that you're just not going to listen anymore, right? And I don't know if that threshold is 10% or 15%, but let me tell you, if I lie to you 95% of the time, that's enough, right? And so we've created this weird false sense of security around these systems that don't create any signal for us. No signal at all to actually be able to protect ourselves. Yes, you could go back and forensically look at video. Like we unfortunately yesterday, right, there was the massive shooting in Indianapolis. And right now they have to be going back and looking at forensic information about video. And they're still struggling with that. But if you can take that timeline, if you take a timeline of a crime, any crime, and you rewind as far to the left as possible and you say, what would have happened if we intervened here? You can then change the outcome. And that's really what this business is about. AI is fast, our response. And that's why I said we bring a guard into the cameras within 2 seconds. Anytime something's happening that might be suspicious, is that we looked at this model. The U.S. military started analyzing the damages that are occurring to U.S. personnel, the injuries in Afghanistan and in Iraq and our other theaters of war. And they said, you know what, we've pretty much done as much as we can to protect the troops. The only thing we can do now is go what they call left of bang. Go before the engagement and start engaging proactively to prevent this. And that's Deep Sentinel's entire model, to take that model that the U.S. military is applying in our theaters of war to actually change the outcomes. And we're applying that same strategy to physical security inside of the United States.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's what got me thinking about your competitors, because to go back to Mr. Bezos, I think that's why he invested in Ring. I think he was looking for what you're building with that platform and may fall short because he didn't follow the model that he used with the other technology that you built in terms of looking at how the data affects outcomes. And so let's talk about your competitors. Did you see what I saw when I looked at what Amazon wanted to do with Ring in terms of how to prevent package theft, how to identify and verify the delivery and make that information known to the user? What do you think about the landscape, and how are you going to beat these giants?
Well, so Jeff is an investor in Deep Sentinel, so I got to tread a little carefully here. But
let's not step on his toes.
I'm actually really comfortable with him being an investor in us and an owner of Ring because our goals are different, right? Ring is certainly provides it's better to have a Ring doorbell than not, right? But it doesn't really provide the level of security that we do. The objective of Ring as a part of Amazon, in my view, and I can't speak on his behalf, right? Like, so please let's just be clear about that. But like, I've brainstormed about this stuff, and the objective of Ring as it relates to Amazon is much more to do with, for example, guaranteeing delivery, being able to show that closed loop on delivery. They have a thing called Amazon Prime Key, I think, where they can open your door and let you in. And I don't use that. I use a lot of Amazon products, but not that one.
Right.
And And so it's really thinking about how do they serve all 100 million of the customers, 200 million, 300 million households, or sorry, residents in the United States. Deep Sentinel is really not targeted to quite that broad an audience. It's that our pricing is one of the things that sets us apart. So we start our pricing at about $100 a month, which is a pretty significant investment for the average consumer. But if you think about it, you spend $100 a month on your cell phone. Is it really worth $100 a month to spend on the security of your family? And so a lot of people said, oh my gosh, that's only for very wealthy people. But really, actually, it's not. It is a significant investment, but people spend $100 a month on things that matter to them. And security, if it really is proactive, security, if it really does prevent things, security, if you really do have an issue, it's absolutely worth $100, $200, $300, $400, $500 a month. And so we have customers that, they're not the wealthy elites, but they have a real security problem. They live in a neighborhood where they're exposed to a lot of crime. They have little kids. They have people that are stealing stuff from their porch, from their driveway all the time. And so what we do, first and foremost, is we solve the problem. That's the first thing that sets us apart from our competitors. The second thing, though, is that we do charge significantly for our service. It's, like I said, $100. Our largest customer pays a couple $1,000s a month. And that's because we have, again, those trained guards that are watching your property for you 24/7. We have businesses that they have a problem with their local homeless community, that they come to their property and they vandalize their storefront. And they don't do it theoretically, right? Like I protect my home, but I don't have any actual crimes that have occurred in my home. These people have this problem happening weekly, monthly, some of them even daily. And to have a guard that's available 24/7 to stop that from happening, we're the only company out there that does that for a reasonable price point. If you really have that kind of problem, your next best alternative is to hire a guard who sits on a chair sitting in front of your business all night long. And that's like $5,000, $10,000 a month. Deep Sentinel can do the same thing, actually, big secret, even more effectively than a guard sitting there for a few $100s a month. And so what sets us apart is that unique use of technology to create a unique product that you literally can't buy anywhere else.
I would imagine, and I grew up in a small town like the one you grew up in Alabama, and they're struggling to hire police officers.
Yeah.
I would imagine that communities like that may look to you as providing the first line of defense in terms of patrolling certain communities, parts of the community, so that they can be proactive in sending officers when it's needed.
Amen. Yeah,
have you seen that as an opportunity, or think that might be an opportunity?
I will say first and foremost, I think policing right now is a pretty sensitive issue. So I'm at the risk of kind of alienating any of your listeners, I'm just going to put out there where I sit on that, just so that we're not kind of dancing around it. I am a humongous believer that we as a population, as a society, need to have some form of law enforcement. And so I see what people do. I have videos of it all day long. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's nice. And people, when given the opportunity to go lawless, they do. Not everyone, but some people will. And our society will increasingly be defined by those who are willing to do the worst things, the more lawlessness that we allow. So I am a very big believer in that. I am also a very big believer that we have significant issues in our law enforcement community, and my friends who are police officers, I would all agree with me that there are massive opportunities to teach de-escalation, massive opportunities to teach use of force. And so I want to put that out there so we're not dancing around it. We work and we partner with police departments. I have two very big beliefs about what you just said. Number one, absolutely. Police departments need to get better protection and signal to noise ratio. When they send an officer into a situation when they don't know what's going on, the outcome is usually not very good. Right?
Exactly.
So in South Carolina, there was a man, he was arrested in his own home because his own burglar alarm created a false alarm. This was in 2019. I don't know if you saw this story.
I did. Yep.
Yeah, Kazim, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Oyenian, but that's my best when I listen to the different news reporters. And he was arrested in his own home because his burglar alarm tripped because there was some issue. And about 2 hours later, which is about the average response time for burglar alarms if they come at all, they come and they arrested him in his own home. He is a law-abiding gun owner. And so when he heard people breaking into his door, he pulled out his gun and he said, "Get out of my house," which is absolutely okay. Right. But they were cops.
Yes.
And so now you have the absolute most dangerous possible situation for everyone involved. Burglar alarms, ironically, in this situation and in many others like it, made everyone less safe. They made the cops less safe. They made the homeowner less safe. They put a gun. They brought the absolute ultimate escalation point into an unnecessary situation. And so I 100% agree with you that police departments across the country should be encouraging citizens, should be encouraging business owners to use technology that only brings police into situations that are necessary. Whether you're on the left or the right, I think you have to agree with that, right? That putting officers that may or may not have the right training, they may be on the force for a week into a situation where they draw their weapon and they're face-to-face with somebody who also has a weapon. There is nothing worse. So Deep Sentinel solves that problem in a way that I can go to sleep at night, know that I make the world and we make the world a better place every day. We stop like 25 crimes a day. And one of the neat things about the word that I just said to you, by the way, is we don't call the police 25 times a day. I didn't say that. If we were a burglar alarm company, to stop 25 crimes, we'd be calling the police like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of crimes. We only call the police a few times a day. And most of the time we call them and we let them know that we already stopped the crime. Because most of the time, because we moved left of Bang, we're calling the police to let them know that our guards, using two-way audio, letting the person know that they're being observed, they're committing a crime, and the police are on their way, they stop. They put the package back. They stop vandalizing the storefront. They stop doing drugs on that mom's front doorstep, right? And they go away. Proactive means we prevented it. There is no need to bring an officer into that situation. There is no need to expose that business or homeowner or even, frankly, the criminal, right? Like one of the weirdest things that we have done, and I'm just going on and on. I could go forever, by the way. One of the weirdest things that we have done is we have saved the lives of these criminals. So we had I'll give you a specific situation down in LA. We had a video popped up. Guard intervened on the subject. "Hey, what are you doing there? You're breaking into the back of a gate." Similar to that gentleman in South Carolina, Mr. Oyenian, that homeowner was a gun owner. And she happens to actually be very concerned for her own security. So she walks around with her gun all the time. She was 15 feet away from that man. If that man had not walked away, that man was literally between 30 seconds and 60 seconds of the end of his life, because he was breaking into a home of an armed woman who was watching TV right next to him. And you know, it's a weird thing to say, I saved a criminal's life, right? But I believe all life is valuable, and somebody who's committing a crime, maybe a crime of convenience, doesn't necessarily deserve the ultimate punishment for that. And so this is why I say, you know, we're a mission-driven company. We are creating safety and security for everyone that we touch, for the business owners, for the homeowners, for the law enforcement officers, for the and even for the potential suspects, right? I mean, to me, that is creating a better society, and that is what makes me proud to be building this amazing business with you know, all the backing and great stuff that we have and the technology that we have. The business outcome, building a massively disruptive business that's disrupting dinosaurs that are not going to make the world safer. That's a neat outcome.
Oh, it is. It is. And that's why I was telling you in our pre-interview, I was so excited to talk to you about what you're building because of that actionable information. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been playing with this new concept that I call Zingy, you know, kind of like thingy.
Zingy.
Zingy, yeah.
Okay.
And Zingy is a concept where you provide wearables that communicate information about you to law enforcement. so that you solve what I think to be the major problem, the information asymmetry. You don't know what they know. They don't know what you know. But putting that all on the table allows for the threat de-escalation, the potential for an explosive outcome to be minimized. If I know that the officer knows that I have a warrant and they may be pulling me over and asking me about it, everybody's got all the information out on the table. If there's some sort of medical problem, that's communicated to the officer. They already know this information before the confrontation escalates, and the wearable allows for two-way communication. So the officer can say, I pulled you over for this reason, but I see you have a warrant. Hey, would you just like for us to go ahead and go down to the station and talk about it? You can follow the car and come on down to the station with me. De-escalate it. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of what we just talked about in terms of policing is built all around this information asymmetry. People aren't able to communicate, aren't able to be proactive, and so the situation spiral out of control. What you've built puts more information intelligence into the situation, de-escalating it or eliminating the ultimate horrible outcome, which is death. And so when I looked at it and thought about how it applies to the mission that Amazon is trying to achieve, how it can help communities, this is disruptive, but it also, like you said, makes the world a safer place.
Yeah.
It's such a cool mission.
It is cool, man. I thank you so much for recognizing that. It's something that, I couldn't be more proud of to be a part of this and to get to lead it, because the, information asymmetry is the same reason we started Redfin, by the way, right? Like a long time ago. And I guess not that long ago, about 15 years ago. I think that the ability to prevent, one of the questions that we get from prospects all the time is like, will you call the police? Will you call the police? Will you call the police? Because they're so used to that being the only thing that their security company can do. Will you call the police? And they don't realize, like, one of the neatest things about us is our customer retention. And our customer retention is super high, 90+%, because once they buy it, they realize, oh, these guys aren't calling the police most of the time because they are engaging in the situation. We aren't a passive participant. One of the things that a lot of our residential customers call us, and they say, you know what, I had the neatest experience. I wasn't home and I messed up and I forgot to cancel my housekeeper. So my housekeeper was sitting on my front porch, and after a minute, a guard came on and said, hey, this is Deep-Sentinel-Security. I just want to make sure that you're supposed to be there at the property. And he says, oh, no, I'm just the housekeeper. Is everything okay? And it creates this complete transparency of information. We're not going to call the police on the housekeeper. All right, cool. We're going to stand by and watch and make sure you don't just say you're the housekeeper and try to break in, right? It's a completely transparent process. If you are a burglar and you're lying and you're the housekeeper, well, sweet. You can just stand on that stoop, and as soon as you start doing something stupid, we are going to call the police and stop you. Or if you are the housekeeper, sweet. You are now safe. You know that you're being observed, right? We're not hiding that, but you're not in a situation where we're going to call the police on you. We actually had one of the funniest ones was we had a reviewer, this bigwig technology reviewer, and he installed it and he had us alongside his other alarm systems, and the other ones called the police on his housekeeper. And we were able to de-escalate the situation because we recognized that there were police on property. We let them know that there was a housekeeper inside the property, and the entire situation, again, de-escalated.
That's right.
They arrive thinking that there's a burglary in progress. We let them know immediately there's a housekeeper in the home. The guy was on the plane. So even if he had wanted to, even if he had Ring, even if he had Arlo, even if he had these other cameras, he couldn't do anything about it because he was in the air. And so again, it just yes, it starts at $100 a month, but think about the importance of that peace of mind that we're able to provide for that. And again, the alternative is paying a guard to sit there, which is thousands of dollars a month. And so the AI element of this being so unique to our ability to do that effectively. And to do it, by the way, one of the other things that's interesting is do that consistently. AI is so consistent. Even if you have a guard sitting there doing nothing, a lot of the times those guards, they're on their iPhone, they're on their Android, right? Like they're playing games, right? And so what another neat thing about this is by doing all of those things, and that they were all hard, we're able to really be confident about that sense of security that we're creating for people.
And do it in scale at a way where you can make money, because the AI is only pushing out those alerts to your team.
That's right.
That require attention. So a very scalable model that makes sense from a business perspective.
Yep, that's right.
So your customer success metrics are completely different than the other systems in the industry.
That's a great observation. Absolutely. Right. Every morning I get a list of crimes that we stopped yesterday. Bam. We're the only security company in the world that gets to look at that report. That's
exactly what I got written. I've written here in my notes.
Bam.
Like, your success metric never shows up in the paper.
That's right. My success
crimes
metrics
you stopped
are the ones that my customers care about too, which is awesome. Right.
That's
like
right.
It's awesome.
And that's cool to me. Has the pandemic affected your business in any way?
Oh man, so much.
Being at home?
So much. In good ways and bad ways. That just the answer though is just so much, right? We had to send all of our work home. We had to learn how to work remotely as a corporate team and as a security team. Our operations had to function differently. All of our technology had to change. I had to change my management style. We had to hire different people. We had to raise capital differently because we're a startup. So everything about our business changed because of COVID. Overall, though, if I were to summarize, 2020 was the hardest year and the best year. We tripled our revenue in 2020, but it's still really hard.
Still really hard. What are one or two hardest things you had to deal with?
Yeah, the two hardest things were learning how to manage our guards remotely. We used to have a guard center where we would be able to observe the guards' behavior, and that meant that we had to hire new guards in a lot of cases. Some people just weren't suited to that working from home situation. And that was really hard because I invest a lot in my employees. We have great benefits. We have more benefits than the average security company, et cetera, et cetera. So having to change over staff was really, really challenging. That's emotionally distressful to me. In order to survive, we had to cut people's salaries. So a lot of our employees had to cut their salaries. And then financially, we had to raise capital in a very, very difficult market. And that, raising capital was very hard for us to do at that time. And, it put us in a situation where instead of being able to raise capital for 2 years, we had to raise capital for 12 months. And so as a CEO, that means I'm back on the hamster wheel raising capital. Like even right now, my board just approved terms for us to raise additional capital this next 3 months. And so that's a very labor intensive process. And then to have to do that all over Zoom instead of face-to-face meetings where you're able to kind of get all that subtle types of communication, all that went away.
Right.
And so I had to learn how to do that differently too.
Before we get you out, let you go, because I could sit here and talk to you all day. This is fascinating to me. Can you give our audience a couple of tidbits around artificial intelligence and how it can be applied to be this disruptive capability that helps the small guy beat the Goliath? Because you've done it, you're doing it, and I always preach that this is one of the emerging areas that entrepreneurs, startups, small businesses need to be investing in if they want to stay relevant. Can you give us a few thoughts?
Sure.
On that?
I mean, my name being David, I'm a big believer in the David versus Goliath story, right? I mean, I grew up hearing that. I was raised Jewish, so I learned it in my Torah class all the time. AI is unconditionally my technical passion. So you couldn't have asked a more important question to me technology-wise. In fact, your listeners won't hear this, but all the books behind me, those are all AI books. I would give two pieces of advice. The first one is to not if you're not an AI expert, don't try to learn the details. It's very easy to get bogged down in the technical architectures and whether you're using NVIDIA or doing it on Google Cloud or on AWS. Don't do that, right? AI has an unending depth that you can go into and never come out with a good business idea. So keep it high level, right? And work with somebody who can help you understand the answer to one very simple question. Can I do this or can I not? And you want to have somebody who's great at answering that question, doesn't go into the rat hole, but is technically competent. And that balance between truly technically competent and not going to go in a rat hole, that person is a unicorn. Hold on to them and don't let them go. Number two would be I would also recommend get your hands a little dirty, which is kind of in contrast with the first piece of advice, but get your hands dirty in the applications, right? Really do some testing, like figure out what your Alexa can and can't do at home and use those as your kind of guardrails as to what can this type of AI, speech recognition, what can it do well and what can it not do well? Compare what Google Home does with Alexa with what Siri does. And that'll give you enough knowledge to kind of understand, okay, these three giants, here's where their state of the art is. I can probably get close to that on whatever they can do. I'm probably not going to get a lot better than they can unless I become an expert. Look at video analytics. What does Facebook do in terms of facial recognition? What does Instagram do with its filters? And get familiar and comfortable with the applications of AI as they exist in the world around you. Take a look at Tesla self-driving. Don't just watch videos about it. Go sit in it. See how it feels. What's the experience like? What is that last mile? Because an entrepreneur's job is not to be the best at how to implement something. It's to be the best at understanding what something can or cannot do and how that influences the lives and the businesses of our customers.
Wow. Again, guys, I hope you were taking notes. This has been a fascinating discussion. David, tell us, how can our Guerrillapreneur community connect with you and how can they connect with Deep Sentinel?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. Deep Sentinel's on the internet, www.deep-sentinel.com. The most cool thing to learn about Deep Sentinel, though, is to go to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce a video every single week with the 15, 20 best crimes that we stopped that week. And it's just awesome to watch, right? Like, you could take my word for it on the podcast, but to see, I'm not just saying that we did that once. I'm not saying we did that twice. We do that every single day, all day long, and we publish it. I use the word transparency. We're transparent with the world. Here are all the crimes that we stopped this week. Here's an auto burglary. Guy opens the door, bam, gone. Here's an attempted vandalism. Brings out the spray paint can, bam. And so check out our YouTube video. That's where you're going to really get the most out of understanding us. And then, if you're interested in connecting more, like I said, we're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can always learn more on our website.
This has been David Selinger, the founder and CEO of Deep Sentinel. Thank you. This has been just an intriguing, fascinating conversation.
Mark, I look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you so much for having me on.
Wow. Didn't I tell you this was going to be a fun episode? I want to thank Mr. David Selinger for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about Amazon and a whole lot about Deep Sentinel. If you didn't catch the theme, in a digital economy, data is the lifeblood. And if you're not telling a story with data in your business, you're going to get left behind. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do one thing for me. Hit subscribe. Well, I want you to do more things. Give us a comment. Give us a like and share it with your friends. And if you like this episode, you may also like some of my other podcasts. Gigging Everything in the Sharing Economy. We just released an exciting, information-packed episode with the CEO of Demandu. Yeah, the guys that are ensuring the gig economy. You don't want to miss that. And if you're a corporate executive who wants to make a run at that corner office, you may like my podcast, Career Coaching X's and O's. We're about to release an episode on how you can beat procrastination. I'll put links to both shows in the show notes. Our next episode is a gigging news episode. You don't want to miss that. Eleanor Tucker and I are going to bring you the top stories from the gig sharing platform and micromobility economies. Check it out and share it with your friends. Okay, Guerrillapreneurs, you know what we say at the end of each episode. Scott Sullivan said it best in episode 7. Be a mace. Sharpen those spikes. And remember, if you're not breaking something, your company might be the next thing that gets broken. Till next time, peace.
Thank you for listening to the Guerrillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may also enjoy the book Guerrillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Follow Mark Peterson on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Guerrillapreneur. Now I want to close with a quote from the great Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. Keep fighting, guerrillapreneurs.